Oh, sorry, look at me.
Okay.
Okay, start again, go again.
Oh, that's a loaded question.
It feels great to be black and queer, in my opinion.
I can say it's confusing.
It can often feel like I'm being kind of pulled side to side by two very different cultures.
It feels special.
It feels great.
I feel really proud, not only of my Indian heritage, but my, I guess, queer heritage.
I'm just here, living my best gay life, mate. Period.
As a young mixed queer person, I face a lot of challenges.
Even just each one of those identities in itself is challenging, being that.
Feeling like you're an other in a world of normals, right?
Because I'm a feminine woman who likes women, I feel like it's a lot easier, it's a lot more passing, whereas, masculine presenting women who are queer may not have such an easy time.
You don't know how you're gonna be treated in that environment. My dad says, "Oh, yeah, it's fine. But also, you can't really trust other people, especially when they have such, what's the word I'm looking for? Violent responses sometimes to being gay.
You know your community is there, the LGBT community is there, and everything that is, this open spaces, the safe spaces are there for you, but it's just is it only those spaces? Is that the only place where I could be myself? If I'm out in the world right now, just leaving my house, that's the only place I could be safe? It's crazy to me, but yeah, that's probably a challenge. Because you want to be amongst everyone, but, not everyone would see you as, equal and all of that, so.
It has impacted a small bit, but for me, nothing too major.
I was really going through an identity crisis.
I identify now as a black man, but that is not something I always have done or always felt comfortable with.
I'm Nigerian, I come from a Christian household, there's lots of stuff that are in Christianity that are very against what I would consider my queer identity.
A lot of family disparities started once I became a bit more open with my sexuality.
When I was 18 years old, I ran away from home because of my sexuality, and I was from a very conservative religious family, and we went into lockdown almost immediately after this. So even now, I'm trying to kind of embed myself within a queer community, but when you don't have these physical spaces, and that can be really difficult, especially considering that even when those physical spaces are open, as a person of colour, it's still difficult to find yourself within them.
There is one TV show, actually, that I felt represented in, and it was Sex Education. I loved it.
Orange is the New Black.
I May Destroy You.
Buttercup from Powerpuff Girls, I guess that's for a lot of us, it seemed I don't have to be entirely as feminine as people expect me to be.
There aren't any.
I'm non-binary, I'm trans, I'm brown, so I'm yet to see somebody who's like me on any sort of media.
Intersectionality is quite important, and I feel like there aren't many shows that kind of show the intersectionality of identity. So I could say there's stuff that represent me as a black woman, I could say that there's stuff that represent me as a queer, but I wouldn't say there's many that conflate the two. But off the top of my head, Pose.
There are no POC bisexual men in any film or TV I have watched in the last decade. There are white men who are bisexual in TV. The biggest example I could think of is American Horror Story, which is not even a show I like too tough, but there is one. But by the end of the show, he's married and has kids and has chosen a heteronormative life. And when there are mixed race males in lead roles, they are often desired or coveted by white women, which is fine. I mean, we live in a predominantly white country, so I'm not going to want to change that narrative, but does that represent me? Absolutely not. And I really struggle with that because, like anyone, seeing people who are like you in the content that you choose to consume it creates a bond that you can't necessarily describe.
I don't feel represented in the British media because none actually, unless you can tell me one, you know.
I don't think like black queer women are actually represented a lot in the media.
As much as I will see queer people and like the visibility of, you know, LGBTQ plus communities is a lot more visible now, but in terms of being a black queer woman, I don't think we're quite there yet.
Just as a regular gay black man, you know, I don't feel represented.
There's a lot of tokenism, so you'll get the odd gay character or the odd lesbian, or you'll get the, you know, mixed race friend of the main white lead, almost to be like, look, we've ticked a box and, you know, you are there. But I think if you look at the stories where people of colour, their stories are told, or people that are queer, it's often about struggles. And I feel like I'd love to see something where someone like me, they're just living their normal everyday life, and it's not about the struggles that they're facing from racism or prejudice or homophobia. It's just someone living their life and having a romantic love story, or it being a sci-fi with just people like me, and it's not even a question of their sexuality or race. And I think that's what I'd like to see, as opposed to only ever seeing stuff that's like focused on struggles, if I see it at all, because you rarely see it.
No, I don't feel represented in British media, and that's just a fact, you know? It's not a joke, it's a fact. But it is a joke that it's a fact.
Because I didn't see a lot of representation or like, you know, people visible, like myself, it took me a really long time to realize that there was nothing wrong with me.
It was really hard for me to feel like I was good enough, and I had really low self-esteem.
People don't see like queer relationships on television, and so like within the gay community or the queer community just in general, it's just not focused around like having like long-term relationships. And maybe I don't fit into that stereotype of the community where everyone just wants to have like fun and live life and be single and blah blah blah. And I feel like the fact that there is a lack of representation makes it difficult for people to be able to visualize that in their actual life.
Not fully identifying doesn't cancel out the fact that it'll still kind of influence me, because that's what I'm seeing as, you know, that's the queer experience, or, you know, that's just how people act in the community. So I'm going to be pushing towards that side to kind of push myself out there. I feel like I belong, but at the same time, it's not really me.
Like the lack of awareness in terms of what's right and wrong, especially in queer relationships. Because like they teach you in school about grooming and things like these. Things like this, like stranger danger, but it's completely missed out in the queer environment. And I feel like a lot of young queer people put themselves in some dangerous situations because they don't know the signs.
As a whole, people are not knowledgeable enough. There's still a lot of things that people aren't educated on.
The lack of visibility means that there's often a lot of judgment and stigma. And whilst there are people willing to ask the right questions, even if that's the case, and that's the majority in my experience, it's still exhausting having to have the right questions answered. That I can't just send you, hey, watch this, or as opposed to asking me all these questions, why don't you read this or engage with this piece of content? It isn't there. And so I am the sole source for these people of that level of information. And it's a high demand. I don't want to be.
For me, it looks like seeing and being surrounded by people that look like you or are similar to you and are interested in similar things like you, or even dress like you, you know?
Representing people across the gender spectrum from all different types of sexualities, in different kinds of relationships, but from all different, you know, racial, ethnic, religious backgrounds.
Like the fact that we have to think about queer visibility is kind of the problem in itself. I would just like everyone to just kind of exist.
I want to watch a show where our main protagonist, regardless of their race or gender, have friends, have community, or have antagonists that happen to be queer. That queerness is an element of who they are, not the only thing they are.
Queer visibility looks like freedom to me, you know, just everyone being able to be who they are and not have to question if someone else accepts it, you know, and being able to show that as well, that there's so many different stories, you know, and so many different people who are in the community who aren't exactly like how the media portrays you to be. There's other people outside of that, other, you know, energies and spaces.
I don't want to be on a documentary on visibility. I don't want to be an icon. I don't want to be treated like somebody who has had a completely different life and experience, because we don't feel like that. This is as natural as anything else to us. You know, we love each other very, very, very much, just like my parents love each other, I guess. But I do understand that we don't live in a, you know, post-race, post-gender, post-many, many, many other things world. We don't live in a post-hate world, and I get that, and I understand why visibility is so important. So I guess visibility for me is just a lot of conversations and understanding that some of us unfortunately need to be more visible for all the young queer kids living inside each one of us, because yeah, visibility really does save lives.
I'm hoping that in 5 years we've made more improvement and you're seeing more people that, you know, are visibly queer and not centered around white protagonists.
More money to independent creators. That's it. Okay.
More multi-million, even hopefully multi-billion dollar projects that engage with the fan base and normalize the queer experience in a way that hasn't happened thus far.
I feel like every queer black person has an incredibly different story, and they're going to start giving people things that they can actually relate to. Yeah, and learn from as well.
I'm looking forward to seeing a lot more intersectional queer visibility.
I just feel like we are a lot more forceful and unapologetic with like our movements and like our political statements. And I think something like queerness, especially off the back of blackness, I don't think will be ignored for much longer.
I'd like to hope that we have someone who's going to push through the barrier and just be like, here I am, this is me, I represent for the young gay black community, and I can do this, you can do this too.
I see queer visibility on screen with more, you know, dark-skinned, masculine, presenting women, you know, just like myself.
What we need is our own space and a lot of money flowing into that space, because as much as we want to talk about diversity and inclusion, I hate those words, by the way, that doesn't mean anything. As much as we want diversity and inclusion and we want people to talk to each other, there is no space for us to think amongst each other.
The next 5 years, I'm expecting different shades, different hair textures, and more non-binary people and like gender non-conforming people on TV.
Queer visibility is going to go intergalactic, like into the space, like it's like Star Trek, but we've actually like won the war, and you know, it's everyone with all these different faces and colours and brightness and like beautifulness and yeah, glitter.